Call to order the City Council meeting for October 4th, 2021. Please rise and we will have Hank Rosso give us a prayer to start off.
Our Heavenly Father, as we come to you this evening, we love our community of Watertown. What a great gift that we often take for granted. Lord, we pray that you would cause this common affection toward this community to cause unity here, as we are like-minded. Even though we are different in our gifts, I thank you for those that invest so many hours behind the scenes to make this city function so well. Lord, we lift up in prayer our city protectors, our police and fire, our medical personnel, the hospitals and clinics. God, we're grateful for each one, and we pray that you bless them and their families in every way. And Lord, as we close this prayer, we remember Rob Bainan, an employee of Watertown who's lost his mother and his brother recently. We pray that you give him comfort and peace, and you'd help him to know, Lord, through your Spirit, how much he's cared for. And we thank you for all these things, for it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Hank. Pledge of Allegiance. Would our Finance Officer, Kristen Bobzien, please call the roll?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Bueller? Here. Danforth? Here. Pauline?
Here.
Paulson?
Here.
Shetty?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum established. With that, the chair will entertain a motion for the approval of the consent agenda. Moved by Councilman Bueller or Tupper? Bueller, seconded by Councilman Shetty. All those in favor? Yes?
I do have one question.
Councilman Billhauer?
That number is a lot higher than it typically is, just timing of things, and I assume as far as the ambulance write-offs, any comment there that, I guess I'm looking at you, Kristen, or?
For those watching it, item B on the consent agenda is writing off an uncollectible ambulance count in the amount of $34,000 roughly, and that is higher than normal. So,
yeah, anything that jumps out, I mean, in particular?
That is actually 2 months worth
Oh, that's
of
two-
collections.
oh, okay.
Yep, so that's why it looks a little high. There was a little
Sounds good.
backlog.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions on that? With that, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. With time for public comments, anyone who would like to address the council on anything that is not on tonight's agenda, you may do so now. Seeing nobody here for public comments, the chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Billhauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Item A on tonight's agenda is an application for a special event retail license to Lake Area Technical College Foundation. We will go to our Finance Officer, Kristen Bobzien, for more information.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for the special event for the Festival of Trees with Lake Area Technical Institute. Everything's in order. Notice was put in the paper. Application's in order. So if there's any further questions, I can try to answer them. Or I do see we have some representatives in the audience too. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair will open public hearing and ask if there's anyone here who would like to comment on this, or if there's any written arguments in favor. You don't have to say anything.
Lavacek with the Foundation Office, and this will be the third year that we have a special event on campus with adult beverages. You do have to be 21 to attend the event. And we also are offering a hybrid option again this year, so you can attend either in person or online like we did last year too. So we appreciate your support, and hopefully we'll see you all at the festival.
All right, thank you. Any further proponent comments? Seeing none, are there any arguments written or oral against this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the council. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Councilman Paulson, if you wanted to comment anything, any council comments or questions? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, that this is a full alcohol license, not just a beer and wine license, correct? Okay.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the application for a special event retail license to LATC Foundation. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Motion carries. Please have a great event. Agenda item B is a second reading of ordinance number 21-40, amending the zoning map of the city of Watertown from A1 agricultural district to R1 single-family residential district and PUD planned unit development for portions of KAK's CAX addition. We will go to our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, for opening comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As you indicated, this is the second reading of this proposed rezone. It's for a development that's owned by Steve Horning. He's the acting agent for CAX Lakeside Edition. He submitted a petition for this rezone for a portion of that development to shift the zoning from the current A1 agricultural district to both an R1 single-family residential district and a PUD planned unit development area. So there are two distinct zoning designations that are being proposed here, the R1 for a portion of this area and the PUD. The property is located west of the existing CAX First Edition. This is all annexed land that's within the city limits, and this has been vetted through the appropriate channels with staff review and subsequently to the Planning Commission, who also recommended approval to the council. With that, I'd stand by for any questions. I know there was some healthy discussion at the first reading. I'd love to pick up on any of those comments or questions that still linger between myself and Stacy Bungard, the Community Development Manager. We'd be happy to address any questions council might have.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here who would like to testify in favor of this? Any written or oral arguments in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to comment against this motion? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the council to approve the amending of the zoning map of the city of Watertown. Moved by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Councilman Bueller, would you like to start? Any council questions or comments? Councilman Danforth.
This is according to Heath's suggestion that there might be some questions. I know that both Bruce and I had a lot of concerns, not concerns, questions that, because it's fairly new to both of us. One of the concerns I had was the connectivity with the, I can't remember what is it, 22nd Street, the one that's already existing out down by the lake. Having talked to Heath and other staff members and to Mr. Horning, that would be really quite burdensome for him to make connectivity to that. It'd be an additional cost of putting that road in. So that I'm good with where that's at. We did have a meeting, I think it was last week, mid to late last week. Mr. Horning and others attended, asked a lot of questions. They were very good at answering our questions, and I'm very comfortable with what is being presented. I think it's a very good opportunity for Watertown, and I think we should proceed with it. So,
thank you. I will just, I happened to talk to some people in the audience who had some questions about annexation. Heath, could you talk about the annexation of this PUD versus, let's say, adjacent properties that are already existing?
Yes, so the history on this property is, I think my map is being displayed. I've shared it to teams, and the two areas in question that we're rezoning are these red lots and these purple lots. These aren't platted lots yet. The plat will be forthcoming at a later date, but as of right now, this entire area is what the next phase of the CAX subdivision entails. This area is currently annexed as part of the city limits, and so that part has been taken care of some time back. I guess I don't know off the top of my head when that was annexed, but I believe it was back when the original phase of CAX was annexed and zoned. Is that correct, Steve? That's correct. So it's been in the city limits, in the proper city limits, for quite some time now, over 10, 12 years. And so what Mr. Horning is doing is moving on to the next phase of what's already been annexed into the city. As far as any adjacent annexations, those would really be driven by any development needs or development plans for those property owners at the point in time when they'd like to be annexed and redevelop or develop their land in a way that makes sense to be in the city. There are times, of course, that the city can initiate annexation. We haven't done that in my time here with Watertown, but I have worked for other communities where we've had to initiate that annexation process. I can say that there's nothing sparking that interest right now from the city's standpoint, at least at the staff level, where we would initiate any annexation adjacent to this. But this land here is currently annexed, and they're just simply moving on to the next phase of their subdivision.
All right, thank you. And for the people watching, there was just some people here who wanted to find out more about this annexation or this amending of the zoning. And I just wanted to assure them, they're adjacent property owners, that everything is okay. They shouldn't be affected. This was annexed long ago. So just wanted to make that clear for anyone watching, but a lot of this information was handled at the first reading and then also at a subsequent meeting with Mr. Horning and city staff. So any further council questions? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question is, in the past, our PUD plans have had a lot more detail than what's being presented to us with this. And then the amendments to a PUD plan, obviously this has changed in the past, I'm guessing, or recently. But can you kind of talk on that, Mr. Von Eye, on why that's changed, why there's not as much detail as there has been in the past, and then if there are amendments going forward, it appears that the city engineer can make that discretion, or it's under the discretion of the city engineer, but can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, no, great questions, Councilman Paulson. So several months back, we were looking at our PUD zoning, and that planned unit development, what it's meant for is to provide for some unique circumstances that the zoning ordinance doesn't already cover. So in this case, the city's zoning ordinance does not have a rural residential zoning district, which is really what Mr. Horning is trying to accomplish here. So short of having that RR, or rural residential zoning district, that accommodates for larger size lots, rural street sections without curb and gutter, ditch type of stormwater conveyance rather than storm sewer, things of that nature that you would see in a more of a, I'll call it a urban acreage kind of a setting. There are communities that have that rural residential zoning district, but Watertown does not. So we steered Mr. Horning through the PUD process, which is what that PUD at times can be used for, is to accommodate for uses of a type and style that aren't otherwise clearly outlined in the zoning ordinance. We did modify our PUD requirements several months back. Councilman Paulson is accurate. What we tried to do, though, is make it a little bit more user-friendly, if you will. We were requiring a pretty heavy lift of design information up front with our former PUD process, which would make the developer have to spend quite a bit of money on consultant fees to provide even all the more design detail for a PUD than what we're getting today. So through that amendment, we scaled that back a little bit, still to get enough information that we were comfortable knowing what the PUD was going to consist of. We wanted to know what type of streets were going to be in there. We wanted to know what some of the setbacks being proposed were, the lot sizes, things of that nature. And of course the uses, the land use types and things like that. And still allowed for enough information to be collected for the boards, the planning commission, the council to make educated decisions on whether this PUD was appropriate for this land area. And really that was the intent behind those changes that we made a handful of months ago. And now subsequent to this, we will continue to dive deeper with the developer and their engineer where they give us detailed construction plans on what the streets look like, how they're going to be built, And of course, all the other litany of things that we look at with the plat that is also forthcoming, and the construction plans, and a development agreement, which will accommodate this subdivision just like any other subdivision, where it commits the developer to build the public infrastructure within a certain amount of time and to the approved construction plans. So a lot of that looks a lot the same after the PUD zoning occurs, but you're right, we did change what's included in the PUD plan to make it a little more user-friendly for everybody, really, not just the developer, but for the city as well.
Councilman Paulson, any follow-up? Councilman Bueller.
No, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. First off, I'd like to say I concur with Mike. I support this rezoning. Just something we typically look at, the things that concern us when we run into PUDs, because, sometimes people like to cram a lot of lots in a small space. And so what we really kind of have to be careful of are the smaller lot sizes, which obviously is not an issue here. And, narrow streets that may be too narrow, or drive over curbs, or cul-de-sacs that are way too small, that don't accommodate city vehicles very well. Those are some of the things that we typically look at when we decide on whether or not we want to approve a cul-de-sac. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the amending of the zoning map of the city. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item C. This is approval of the 2022 open enrollment agreements for employees for the city of Watertown. We have our Human Resources Director, Darcy Nichols, here for the first time, I believe.
It is time to submit our 2022 Benefit Renewal, and I am very pleased to have worked with Marsh McLennan out of Sioux Falls on this project, and they provided a very competitive health insurance package for us for 2022. So our medical carrier will continue to be Wellmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Dakota. We will again be offering 2 creditable and fully funded plans for 2022 with 4 tiers of coverage options, being single, employee plus spouse, employee plus children, and employee plus family. Our overall premium increase for 2022 will be 5.36%. So we feel like that's very competitive, and we're happy with that to move forward. So what that means in terms of pricing for our employees is for PPO Plan 2, which is our most popular plan. We have about 99 employees on that plan currently. With a $3,000 deductible, the city contributes 95% of that premium for single coverage. And for family coverage, the city contributes 75% of the total premium costs. So what that means for an employee on that plan for 2022, it will only be $1.53 a month increase. And for families like mine, it'll be $23.58 a month, with our retiree contribution rates holding steady and the same. So moving on to dental. Dental rates for 2022 increased at an 3% increase in premium, and they explain that as due to COVID. So our Delta dental premiums are fully funded by our employees. So for next year, that will be for single coverage $41.82 a month, with a family rate of $100.80. So we are incurring the 5.3% increase to health insurance premiums with 3% to dental, and holding steady with no increase to MetLife or VSP vision premiums. And we will continue to provide the $5,000 in life insurance for city employees. Any questions? I submit that to your approval.
All right, thank you very much. If you'd stay there, stay on the ready.
Yep.
This isn't a public hearing, but I do like to ask, for transparency's sake, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Seeing none, the chair will close that and look for a motion from the council to approve. Moved by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Vilhauer. All right, council, are there any questions or comments? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions really, but the information that we had in our renewal packet all had 2020 dates on it. It looked like we were looking at a 2021 rate, so I guess I'm going by what you're telling us, Darcy.
It's updated now.
Oh, it is updated now?
Yeah.
Okay,
We have the,
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the open enrollment agreements for 2022. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item D, an approval of a professional services agreement for testing services associated with the primary clarifier number 2. For this, we'll start off with our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Thank you, Mayor. The wastewater treatment facility is undergoing another project. As the council, most of you are full well aware, we're having to reconstruct primary clarifier number 2 out there at the facility, a critical component in the wastewater treatment process. In that project, we have consulted with HDR Engineering for the design and construction admin for the project. What this contract is for, it's a supplement of sorts to HDR's contract, but it is specific with geotech engineering. What geotech would do is they would perform all the geotechnical and materials testing for the primary clarifier. And if you recall, we did something similar on 10th Avenue where we had a primary consultant contract with CDI, and then we sub-consulted the geotech and the testing work with another firm that specialized in that kind of work. That's what we're proposing to do here. This particular contract with geotech would be in the sum of $21,500, which seems reasonable for the work and scope of their duties on the project. And with that, I will stand by for any questions. One more thing to point out. This would be over our budgeted amount. However, between Mike Berger, the wastewater superintendent, and the engineering staff, and talking with the finance officer, we're confident and comfortable still awarding this contract to be paid for out of the cash reserves in the wastewater department.
Thank you very much. Are there any further comments on this item? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve this agreement. Motion made by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Agenda item E is an approval of a professional services agreement for services associated with the design of the new street facility. And for this, we'll start off with our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Thank you again, Mayor. This is obviously another exciting project that Watertown's had in the works here for quite some time. I'm glad to be part of bringing it through to fruition, at least to this point of looking at securing a design contract for our new street facility. Our street maintenance operations, of course, have operated for quite some time out of their current location, which they've come to outgrow, and the facility's done nothing but age year after year for some reason. So we're looking to get into a new facility of adequate size and land area to store all of our equipment and materials. With that, staff put out and advertised a request for proposals for design services, and we received 4 back from 4 architectural firms. Those proposals were reviewed by a design committee of sorts that was made up of the assistant city engineer, the street superintendent, Councilman Tupper, and myself. The 4 of us reviewed these proposals. We looked at the experience of the firm. We looked at the experience of the individuals they were proposing to have on the project. We looked at a lot of work history of the firms. And anyway, JLG is the firm that rose to the top through that assessment process, and that's who we are proposing to enter into a design contract with. You'll note the contract amount here is for an introductory amount of $15,000. That's so that we can start the process with them where they can get a better understanding of the full scope of work to give us a well-defined not to exceed number later on. They do have a proposed amount for the overall design that was very comparable to the other 3 firms so we don't suspect there be any big surprises or upsetting numbers once we enter into a contract with JLG. It's just a matter of getting some of this preliminary work done within that $15,000 amount on today's action, and then going from there with a well-defined number for their continued services. With that, their services would generally consist of helping us site the new facility, where we're going to land it within the community. That's still a little bit up in the air. We have a few different areas we will contemplate with the consultant and weigh out the pros and cons. And then, of course, ultimately the design of the facility would be the brunt of their work for the rest of their contract. With that, I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any further comments on this? But yeah. So I do need a motion to approve the professional services agreement. A motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Open it up for council questions or comments. Councilman Bueller.
Thank you. Tried to jump the gun on that one a little bit. Your RFPs, what fee percentage are you looking at from JLG?
Let me see.
7.5 is what's in the documents.
Thank you.
7.25.
So did we get in our other RFPs, who was probably in the second spot? Did we have somebody that we were looking at that might have been a good alternate there?
As far as the other firms that proposed?
Yeah.
They included Stone Group Architects, TSP, and Design Architects out of Brookings.
Did they give you a price?
Everybody gave a price,
fee?
correct? Yes.
How did JLG stack up to the rest of them?
They were right in the middle. They were second or third overall in price. And Councilman Tupper, if you recall better than I do, but they were about right in the middle in the overall cost. And the difference wasn't a huge spread by any means. I don't have that exact data in front of me, but it was. You weren't talking like $100,000 difference or anything like that. It was to the tens, 10 to 20 grand. I want to say it was the biggest spread on some of the numbers.
Yeah, just to me that just seems awfully high. 7.25, 7.5%. To me.
Councilman Tupper.
Yeah, they were all within, I think, probably about $20,000 difference between the four of them. JLG definitely stood out between the whole group to fit the needs of the community, I think, the best of all. I mean, it was unanimous. Mr. Von Eye gave us all kind of a scorecard to go through them all, and like I say, by far JLG was stood out the best. We looked at a lot of things. JLG, as far as a firm that's been there a long time with a lot of experience with jobs like this, we just felt that was the best fit.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth.
I would concur with Mr. Bueller. The rate seems very high to me on any of the projects that I've done, or personally, or with the city. That number seems high. What did we agree to on the ICE facility? Wasn't it 5-point-some%?
5.5 is ICE. I think, and I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, but this is preliminary, and when we get to the final contract, I think there'll be some room for negotiation on what that final number actually is. This is to really kind of vet out the big picture design of the facility, where it's going to go, and then we can hone in on exactly what it's going to look like.
Okay, but I would just like to comment.
For the record, that was our city manager, Amanda Mack.
If I'm sitting in their shoes and we approve this, there's really not a lot of reason to negotiate it down, because we're approving the contract, right? We're approving $15,000 for initial design and the 7.25%
Mr. Mayor.
for the balance of a contract, aren't we?
I would, City Manager Mack, would you like to answer that or defer to our Public Works Director?
I would defer to our Public Works Director. I wasn't part of the committee that vetted them, so.
Public Works Director Von Eye, please, and address that concern.
Absolutely, Councilman Danforth. So the 15,000 is really all this action tonight would be addressing. We would be entering into a contract for up to $15,000 for preliminary design and scoping. What we would then have to do is bring back an amendment to that contract to add to it the full design amount. And that is the portion that by all means could be negotiated yet at this point. We are not committing to a 7.25% fee yet at this point. We are simply committing to the $15,000 preliminary fee, and then we'll bring forth an amendment to lock in the overall design contract amount.
Follow up for Councilman Danforth.
Well, and Heath, I understand that, but highly likely, if they come back with their preliminary design, we aren't going to go to somebody else if they don't come down in price, right? I mean, and I do want to make it clear that I think JLG is a very good choice. We used them for our wellness facility. They were great to work with. So this really isn't a question of who was chosen, because I think they're certainly worthy. It really comes down to that just seems like a high number, and I think for us to approve this with a reference number of 7.25% doesn't give a whole lot of motivation for them to get to a better number, in my opinion. It takes away a lot of our cards or a lot of our position for them being too high. I mean,
Director Von Eye, would you like to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. One point of clarity I'm trying to obtain over text here is that I believe that 7.25 included the CA, the construction admin, as well, which paints a whole different light on this amount and that percentage. Because if you can get design and CA for 7.25, that is right in the ballpark. If it were just design services, yeah, that the percentage that should fall in, and it does vary. I mean, you get anywhere from 5 to 11%, depending on the type of project and what it is you're doing. But so the 7.25 didn't jump out necessarily at any of the staff as a concern from that standpoint, and particularly if it does include the construction admin, I think that it's probably pretty competitive. It's just as competitive as you're going to find, especially with the other three that proposed.
Heath, can you just for my sake and everybody's sake, what does the construction admin consist of from their their standpoint? So
yes, absolutely. So the construction admin would be the site presence. Again, I'll use 10th Avenue as an example. We hired CDI to be the construction administrator for the construction of 10th Avenue. Their engineer, their technician, they're out there full time on that project. Inspecting, making sure that the contractor's following the plans and specifications. So in this case, it's not necessarily full-time, but the architect would have a presence on our project to do construction admin work throughout the construction phase, making sure the contractor is following the plans and specifications that were put together by that architect.
Director Von Eye, you're saying you think that it has CA covered in the 7.25, or is there some way to verify this?
Yes, there is. In whether I could do that right now on the fly or at a later time, either way is possible.
I think the chair is going to defer action on this for a moment while we get an answer to that, because until we do, the questions are speculative and possibly incorrect. So let's find out that information for certain. We will come back to this item. So the chair is going to defer action, further action on item E, and move on to item F on the agenda, which is an approval of purchase agreement conveying to Watertown Development Company for economic development purposes a portion of city-owned land on which the Watertown Senior Activities Center is located. So with that, we will start by going to our city attorney, Matt Roby.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me pull up, excuse me. So this is kind of the culmination of a series of events that goes back a couple of years when the city made a loan to Craig Holdings LLC to tear down the palace. And then Craig Holdings LLC, developer Jesse Craig, had a vision to build kind of an L-shaped complex on the site there, which would entail a portion of our city-owned land there where the senior center sits. And as part of that process, he agreed to build Generations on First, which is soon to be the new home of the Senior Activity Center. And so what you have in front of you here is a purchase agreement between the city and the Watertown Development Company, which would convey the land to the Watertown Development Company with the understanding that it would then be conveyed to Craig Holdings LLC. It's actually a portion of the lot where the senior center building sits. It's not the entire lot. And that transaction is contingent upon the seniors being fully vacated from their current facility. So we wouldn't make them homeless. By the time that they would be in their new facility, we would close the transaction. So that's just kind of a rundown. One last piece. As consideration for the transaction, the developer is also not conveying, but agreeing to enter into a lease agreement with the city for 99 years to provide 1,200 square feet of public space in this new facility that will serve as an amenity to the future downtown park. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve this purchase agreement from the council.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Are there any questions or comments? Councilman Danforth.
Is there any contingency, Matt, in this, that in the event that the ruins does not get built, that the land gets conveyed back to the city of Watertown?
Yes, there is. There's actually two contingencies that are similar. And let me see here. Let me pull it up. So it permits the city to reacquire title if they fail to commence construction within 24 months of a mixed-use, multi-family, residential, commercial property as they're currently contemplating. So within 24 months, if there's still nothing happening there, it would allow the city to reacquire that property on the same terms, which is essentially $1.
Do we know, Matt, and I think the last question on this one, because I think it's a good use for that land, and it certainly benefits us with the plan in the park. But you had stated that he has to start construction within 24 months. Was that right?
The way the language reads is that it would give us the right, not the obligation, but it would give us the right if construction, fails to commence construction within 24 months.
Do we have any indication from Mr. Craig right now as to when he plans to start this?
I think he's chomping at the bit as far as last I've heard. I believe that he's already lined up the asbestos test for October 19th or 20th, I believe. Assuming the seniors are out of there by then, that's the plan. And once that occurs, I think the demolition will be shortly after that. And so I expect things to be full steam ahead, similar to his other projects he's completed downtown.
Okay, yeah. My concern there is with our decisions that we have to make with the park that's coming, and or highly likely to be coming anyway, and that darn hole that's been there for what seems like forever. It's really unsightly to our uptown area. So, I hope he is, without question, ready to go and start processing that, so we can move forward with our planning and also that taking care of that residual hole that exists there. It's unsightly. So,
Thank you, Councilman Tupper.
I know, I'll back up City Attorney Roby on that they are. I've been working with the senior center on this project, and they are planning on asbestos mitigation or whatever you want to call it I believe on the week of the 19th. I've actually run into the contractor that's supposed to do the demolition. He is scheduled to come in the week of the 25th, so. And at that time, then they'll finish cleaning up the whole of the palace, so.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the purchase agreement conveying land to Wwdc. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now we will circle back to agenda item E, which is the approval of the professional services agreement for a new street facility with JLG. Last we left, we had tasked our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, with finding out some information. Director Von Eye, have you found that out? I
have found that information, Mayor. So I'll add some clarity to JLG's proposal. Their original proposal listed a 7.25% fee, and that was for design and construction. So based on a $6 million project, just throwing random numbers here, but you know, somewhat random numbers, $6 million project for design and construction admin would total $435,000 in architectural fees. What we did then is subtracted out the 20% of that for the construction admin, and that gave us the $348,000 for design services. That $348,000 is what is very comparable to the other three proposals. One of the proposals was $346, the other one was $363, and the lowest one was $329. So again, they were all within plus or minus 10 to 20 grand of JLG's $348 for the design services. But that $348 would not include CA, but the 7.25% does. They would apply that same rate to the overall project cost.
Our city manager, Amanda Mack, would like to comment on this as well.
Just to provide some additional information for comparison, 292, which is doing our architecture services for the ice arena, is at 5.5%, and then the proposed CMAR is at 2%, so it's 7.5% for design services and construction administration.
Councilman Danforth?
The CMAR and the construction admin are different issues, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's potentially some overlap, but those are completely different issues.
When I asked Dick, I just texted him. He said
this is Dick Strasburg.
Sorry, he said that is a comparable number for construction admin.
To that point, the CMAR, if I may, Mayor, the CMAR is they're doing that construction admin because it's their project at that point. They're the construction manager at risk, so they're checking on all the subcontractors. They're making sure everything's getting carried out in the field, just like these architects would do if we hire them for that service, just like our civil consultant did on 10th Avenue.
So we won't hire a CMAR on this project?
No, we're not anticipating that. A design, bid, build process is what we're going through on this one.
For anyone watching, the council is just trying to get the best deal possible for the taxpayers of the community by making sure that the rate we're getting for either construction or the architecture or all of the entire proposal is at the lowest rate we can possibly get. So that's what's going on for anyone. And we had referred the ice arena project as an example of something else that we have done to lower the rate as the lowest rate possible. So, Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. That's definitely a horse of a different color. When you first came out with this, it sounded like our architectural services were going to be 7.5%, which to me seems very high. I'm not altogether sure I understand the difference between construction administration and construction management fees. Can you help me with that, Heath?
They are sometimes intermixed. I don't want to confuse the two processes because you have the design, bid, build process, which we're going through for the street facility, but then you have the CMAR process that we're going through for the ice facility. Two completely different ways to manage a project. The CMAR process, you hire a contractor, they take on all risk for bringing in that project at a guaranteed maximum price, and they facilitate the bids and the subcontractors and everything. But the good thing about that process is up front for a complex facility like that, they're plugged into the architect during the design phase. So they can add value-added engineering through the design when the contractor says, hey, that's going to be hard to build when you design it that way. How about we do it this way? So they add value to that design process. The design bid build that we're going through for the street facility, street facility is a little more, I don't want to call it mundane, but it's a little more typical structural process. There's not a lot of surprises that necessarily going to happen in that. So the architect will design that. We'll put it out for bid. We'll get a contractor on board. But then now we need somebody to help check that contractor off, make sure they're building it to the plans and specs. And that's where the construction admin comes into place, where they're providing some oversight, not daily, but some oversight enough to know and checking off the pay applications and reviewing the change orders and checking quantities and tracking quantities as they're used throughout the project, and all those kind of things that need to be focused on in detail through the construction phase.
Thanks. I feel like I understood the difference between design bid build and CM and then CMAR. But I'm just, what I'm not clear about is, help me out here, Heath. It is construction administration versus construction management. What's the difference? And construction management, I've heard, is typically a 2% charge. Can you? I mean, I understand the difference between those three types of the structure, but I don't necessarily understand the difference between those two: construction administration, construction management.
Sure. I would say that the CMCA often get combined just like that. When you talk about the construction phase, CM and CA are oftentimes lumped together. If you look at it that way, it's really all those things I just described, but you can break it down further to say, okay, the management side is looking over the shoulder of the contractor on a daily basis, making sure they're turning the wrench to the right torque spec and all these things, where the CA, the administration, is more the contractual side. They're watching the quantities, they're checking and reviewing the pay applications, they're processing those to the owner, to the city, signing them off as though they approve them, and they're recommending payment based on what they've been given by the contractor. So it's more that contractual side of things where they're really managing the contract and making sure that the contractor is held accountable to the terms of the contract. One example, Kristen's whispered at me over here, which is a good example. The airport terminal, Mead and Hunt is doing the construction admin for us on the airport terminal. They were the architect that was selected to design it, and then now they're performing the CA through the construction phase.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the professional services agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. That concludes our agenda items for tonight. Is there any old business? Seeing none, is there new business? City Manager Mack.
Mayor, I do have just a couple of things. A reminder that we'll hold our budget hearing next Wednesday, October 13th. We'll start at 4:30 p.m. I think Kristen and her team plan to have the preliminary budget out to you all tomorrow. It won't be the pretty book-bound version, but you'll be able to dive into it, and she will be available through Thursday and then early next week if you want to get together in small groups or individually, ask her all the questions about the budget.
But we will get the pretty packets, right?
Yes. Okay. We're saving that so that you have something to look forward to next week. And treats of some kind.
Sure, we'll go with that. Any further new business? Public Works Director Von Eye.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to announce this evening information I believe most of you have received by now, but after much deliberation and very careful consideration, I did notify Amanda Mack, our city manager, of my resignation as the city's Public Works Director and city engineer. I know it's been 3 short years of my time here since being hired on in 2018. but I'll forever be indebted to the opportunities afforded to me by the city of Watertown. I've had a great working relationship through the challenges and opportunistic projects and everything that we faced in these 3 short years. We've accomplished quite a bit that I'm proud to say that I've been part of and been able to contribute to the city. And what's happened is I've been extended an offer in the private sector. So after nearly 20 years in the public sector, I'll be taking advantage of that opportunity to move on to the private sector and hopefully continue to serve public agencies, not just one, but several, through that capacity. So I really do look forward to the opportunity. And again, thank you to this council and the prior council that I got to work with so closely. Very thoroughly enjoyed that time working with everybody and the relationships that I built over the few years.
Thank you very much, and I'll address you by your first name and say Heath. You've been a true asset to Watertown. I've seen you at work both in public here and in private meetings with the public, and you are a true asset. You have helped the city tremendously over your time here, and I've been tempted to ask Chief Toomey to arrest you on something and put an ankle bracelet to force you to stay in city limits, but I do not want to stand in the way of someone pursuing what they feel is best for themselves and their families. So we thank you. I speak for all of the council and saying you will be missed and you are valued. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Any further new business?
I don't know if this falls under new business or announcements. I'll just do it right now. And I spoke with Chief Toomey when I came in, but I thought it was kind of neat today on the way home. Before I came to the meeting, I seen this police car parked along the side of the road, and it was in a neighborhood that we see a lot of police cars in. Put it that way. It's usually not a good thing, and I seen the lights on, and again I couldn't see anybody around there, but I could see the lift gate was open on that police car. And as I drove by, I seen the female officer that was there, and I know Chief Toomey told me her name, but I can't remember it right off the top of my head. But she had about 6, 7 little kids standing there, and she was showing them all the stuff in the back of the police car. And, to me, I thought that was just amazing because, like I say, my aspect of most of the time when I see a police car there, it's not a good thing. But I just thought it was amazing, and she was just having a heck of a time, good time with those kids, and they were all having a good time with her, and my hat's off to her. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Vilhauer.
That's a nice segue into what is a Wednesday coffee with a cop. Is that what I understand? A couple different. I don't know the date, the times, or the locations right offhand. Can you fill us in, Chief?
Chief Toomey, would you please come up to the microphone, though? The chair will allow some leniency here.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning it. Yeah, we're excited. It will be the first time we're participating in this at the Wheel Inn on Wednesday morning from 9 to 10, and then at the Gather Coffee Shop from 2 to 3. So come on out and have some conversations with the law enforcement. We're going to be joined by the Sheriff's Office as well. So it should be a good event for the community to interact with our law enforcement officers.
You buying donuts?
I will buy. If you show up, I will buy you a donut.
All right, and I know I would speak for Chief Toomey in saying to go off of Councilman Tupper's comments. If you are out in the community and you have any questions about law enforcement, go and talk to, any one of us, anyone in the police department, because I've heard it so many times from Chief Toomey that we want people to look to the police as their resource, as a servant of the people, and sometimes people aren't taught that, and so that's one of the reasons why you do outreach with children and in schools and things like that, to teach them that that's where help will come from, and it's a public perception thing.
Yes, and that officer was Officer Alexis Spicy. She's awesome.
All right. Any further comments? Councilman Vilhauer.
I've mentioned this a couple different times, but I want to extend my kudos to, I'm looking at our Public Works Director and probably our Park and Rec as well. The parking lot at the boat ramp at City Park turned out great, so a very nice improvement out there.
All right. Any further new business? Seeing none, are there liaison member reports? Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little liaison report to try to get better at this as we move forward. I sometimes been a little bit lax. I try to take some notes. I took copious notes at the last meeting, and they're at my house. So I quickly tried to remember some of the high points. So just to let everybody know, the new greens are coming in very well. It sounds like Todd seems very, very happy, the groundskeeper there. The Wellness Center, I checked to see if that's up and running at capacity, and it sounds as though those changes, those issues we had with air handling systems are in full operation now, the way it sounds, according to Tony Struy. Then we are looking at, one of the questions we've had is are we using our parks like we should? Are there things that we need to add? Are there things that we need that are not being used that perhaps we need to get rid of? That's something that we need to analyze it, and we're using an outside firm, company called Stockwell, and they're apparently going to do an analysis of all of our parks and give us some ideas as to what direction we may want to go moving forward. We've got places where they got a softball field, we're putting AgriLime in, 6 people use it a year. It doesn't make sense. If we've got gyms that we're taking care of, and in some instances it may be, we might even consider looking at, getting rid of some of the park space, or we may want to add more. But that certainly is something we may want to take a look at. Outsourcing is an issue too. We're trying to move forward to make a decision, and this will help. Stockwell will help us in this regard as well to decide what areas of town would make sense for us to outsource some of our work, such as mowing and weed control, that kind of thing. So moving forward, I think that'd be beneficial for us. I think that's an opportunity. I think that's well overdue for us to move in that direction to get some of that done. We're already over. I think we're really strained as far as personnel goes for the park department right now, and so that could take some of the burden away from that moving forward. And not saying we don't get good quality work now, but it could possibly be even better moving forward. I still hear there's a lot about pickleball. That's another issue that we're trying to tackle and trying to figure out some options and some opportunities for different spaces moving forward for pickleball. And Stockwell's given us some information, some estimates on the cost, which was way, way higher than we had earlier anticipated, I think, to put in a 6-court pickleball facility. So that's something we'll just have to consider and see what we can do moving forward. It certainly is top of mind for our community, I think, and we'll try to get something in place for those folks. But that's all I could remember from my notes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Seeing none, are there announcements? Seeing none, we also have no need to go into executive session tonight. So the chair will say good night and God bless Watertown and take a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Tupper, seconded by Shuddy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned.